Well, I'm glad you brought out affordability. Now, countries such as UAE, there are people from so many countries, and affordability means different to different people.
Mm-hmm.
How was it for you as a parent to support your children when you have to hire LSAs and speech therapists and occupational therapists and all these things, because it isn't cheap at all?
No, it isn't cheap. I think when I'm faced with a family who are struggling financially to manage all of these accommodations, the thing to remember is life is a journey, not a destination. So if you can afford one therapy right now, do the therapy that is most needed. And that might be speech and language, because once a child can communicate, you have a lot more success. So definitely would recommend speech and language therapy as a first for a child with a communication barrier. I wouldn't recommend speech and language therapy if it was a physical disability. So find the child's highest need and support that first, because that is usually the barrier to the other needs. If you can afford speech and language and OT, great, do that. But if you can't afford it, do the thing that you can afford. So often families will want to do and be advised to do speech and language OT and have an LSA. Remembering that an LSA is trying to get the child usually to conform in a mainstream classroom. You don't have to put your child into a mainstream classroom, okay? So the LSA typical job, one is to promote independence. They're trying to get that child to work as independently as possible, but that takes time. Then their job is to differentiate the work to make sure they are accessing the work so that there is some learning going on. But typically an LSA is in there to manage the behaviours, because a teacher can't manage the behaviours of 30 children sufficiently and effectively and kindly across all of the children. Classrooms in Dubai are a phenomenon amongst themselves. Say you have 25 children, typically they may be from 25 countries. You've got children who don't speak English. You've got gifted and talented or advanced learners in the classroom. You've got children who are bereaved because they've lost parents or pets. You've got children who've just moved to the country and so are experiencing that, it might be low-level trauma, it might be high-level trauma. Every child in that classroom needs something. We're all different. So when you then have a child with a much higher need, you do need that adult to help them. If you can afford an LSA but no therapy, go with it. But get your LSA to be watching YouTube, to be learning themselves. You can teach. I taught myself so many things, like how to use PECs. I taught myself. I used it when I wanted to know more and I had the money. I then went and had the training. But you can learn on the internet. I was listening to one of your podcasts. He said that you've got at least 10 international libraries in your phone. So you can learn and you can find the information. But the costs can be prohibitive. Pick the highest need, the one that will give your child the most success right now, and do that. The rest can take its time. They grow, and I think early intervention is key. If you've got the money and you can afford it, throw as much as you can, because the neuroplasticity of the mind, and you need it. But if you can't afford it, they're still going to be who they are. My son still struggles with many things, even though he's 27. But we can overcome those in society, and he can have the support mechanisms to make him able to not just function, but function brilliantly in the things that he's chosen. Speech and language is going to help, but it doesn't necessarily change all of the time as quickly as we want it to. So if you do speech and language this year and OT next year, actually, it doesn't matter if that's all that you've got. We're in a private system here, private healthcare, we're in private education, so it is expensive, but that is also most of us, not all of us, most of us have the choice of whether or not we want to bring our children up in a private system, unfortunately. And so the private businesses will say, if you need, we will provide you A, B, C, D. I don't go to McDonald's and expect to get a steak, because McDonald's don't supply steaks. If I want a steak, I have to go to a steak restaurant. And I think it's the same for children who are really struggling. If the mainstream environment doesn't suit your child, put them in another environment, because it's likely that environment has what they need to give them the best success this year. Could change next year. Children change, right?